Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to the Environment and Climate Change Committee. There are no fire drills planned for this evening. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in the Market car park adjacent to the Civic Suite building. Please be reminded to switch off your mobile phones and turn any other electronic devices to silent. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed where the proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. Please ensure your microphone is switched on when speaking and you speak clearly into the microphone. If you are seated in the public area of the chamber, it's likely that your image will be captured by the recording cameras and result in your image becoming part of the broadcast. If members for any reason do not present for the whole debate on an item, you should consider and seek advice as necessary on whether it would be appropriate for you to vote on that item. Apologies for absence and substitute members. Councillor P. Capon is substituted by Councillor Ian Wilson. And also Councillor D. Sharp. Item 2, non-members attending, Councillor Marriott, thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of July. Are the minutes agreed? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? None. Are there public questions or notice? There are none. We go on to item 6, waste strategy for Essex. The report begins on page 6.1. The report sets out a clear ambition and commitment to reduce the impact on our environment of dealing with things we throw away. It is a shared 30-year strategy with the County of Essex that has been jointly developed by the Borough, City and District Councils with Essex County Council. Mr. Houghton, do you have anything to add to the report?
Good evening, members. No, I've nothing further to add, but I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Questions from the committee members? Do you have any? I will move that the recommendation. Yes, we do. Yes, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 6.4, there's a commitment to cease the use of landfill by 2030. The alternative is to go to EFW sites, and I don't see many existing EFW sites at the moment. Several coming on stream sort of 2026 and maybe later. Some haven't actually got approval yet, so I'm just wondering if that's achievable to eliminate landfill completely by 2030. Is that achievable?
Mr. Marcus? Mr. Houghton, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Speaking of Essex, yes, they I believe that it is achievable. They've just recently awarded a energy for waste contract to Mildenhall, which is planned to commence in around about 18 months' time. So, actually, maybe shorter than that, but it's around about 18 months' time as a maximum, I think. So, they're certainly confident that they've put provision in place to go from landfill, which is the least preferable option, to energy to waste.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton.
Did Mr. Houghton say Mildenhall, or does he mean Rivenhall?
Thank you. My apologies. Yes, Rivenhall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. On page 6.4, it talks about a commitment being added to work together to increase recycling in public spaces, reduce littering and fly tipping. And there's a few points in there. The detail isn't in the strategy, is it? It's more high level and sort of ambition, but not how it's going to be achieved. So will we see regular feedback and have communications as to what is being done to make the strategy achievable?
Mr. Houghton.
I mean, that's a good question. I think that officers asked as well. So actually, we've had some encouraging signs already that Essex are reaching out almost as the ink is drying on this strategy. So we've had meetings with them already around the strategy and about how we can deliver these. So some working groups being put together and some are being sort of revived, such as the fly tipping group for Essex. So it's very encouraging, actually, the sort of dedication and sort of resource they're putting into this.
Councillor Belton.
Thank you. And just one more question. Page 6.5.2.15, next steps. It says that decisions are being taken individually by each council that's a member of the partnership, and then following agreement of the strategy, we'll move forward. Devil's advocate, what happens if somebody doesn't agree to the strategy?
So the strategy commences still, so it's those that sign up. We'll kind of continue. So I think now, I'm trying to count. I think there's only one other council now, which I think is Basden, has yet to sign up and agree. So and that's just the timing. So we are. It's just our cycle happens to be towards the end, but every other district council and borough council have signed up to this now.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Do I have any more questions? No? I move that the recommendations set out on page... No? Oh. Set out on page 6.1 of the report. Agree to the adoption of the waste strategy for Essex 2024-2054 in the form appended to this report, Appendix 1. R2, to note that the post-adoption statement on the strategic environment assessment appended to this report as Appendix 2. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Okay. A vote of show of hands, please. Agreed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 7, Air Quality Annual Status Report. The report begins on page 7.1. The report seeks to ratification from the committee for the Air Quality Annual Status Report. Mr. Padden, do you have anything to add to the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing further to add to the report, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
I invite questions from the committee members. Do we have any? Yes, thank you, Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, all the monitoring seems to be for nitrogen dioxide, yet one of the recognised pollutants is particulates. The intention is to cease the monitoring of nitrous oxide, but I wondered if there was going to be any continuous monitoring of particulates, in particular rubber from tyres. Electric vehicles are great, they don't have any exhaust emissions, but they still, their tyres still produce small particles of rubber and plastics. So I wondered if we were going to still or introduce some monitoring of particulates. Thank you. Mr.
Padden.
Thank you. At this moment in time, there's no firm plans to start monitoring for PM 2.5s, but it's something we will consider for future. We are waiting for guidance from DEFRA, who are currently sort of putting the onus of sampling on County Council, because as you rightly say, most particulate matter for PM 2.5s is from tyres. So the best way to control it is with redesigning the roads and controlling vehicle movement on the roads. So the onus will probably be with county highways. And just one other quick point: we intend to continue monitoring for nitrous oxide. It's not something that we're going to be stopped monitoring.
Thank you, Mr. Padden. Councillor Belton. Do you want to come back, Councillor Cross?
Thank you, Councillor Belton and Chair. Yeah, just to say that one of the relatively high levels was along the stretch outside Fitzwymark School in Hockley Road. I think it was the second highest count regarding nitrogen dioxide, but it was still not exceeding the recommended level. I appreciate that, but we're calling for speed restrictions in that particular section of Hockley Road for road safety reasons. And I just wondered that would have the effect of also reducing the particulate levels if we reduce the speed in that particular section. So I wondered if that's something that we could recommend to Essex County Council. They consider speed restrictions in that particular area to reduce the risk to pedestrians alike and also reduce the PM 2.5 levels and nitrogen dioxide levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That's something I'm happy to raise with colleagues at County Council for you, and I'll report back if I hear anything from them.
That's very good. Thank you very much.
Councillor Belton?
Thank you. Not a question, but just a thank you to Mr. Padden for bringing this forward. A number of us in the room were involved in the working group to bring air monitoring forward. Really pleased when I saw the results a few months ago to see that we're in the right stage and the right zones. Gave some reassurance for our residents who were concerned, especially outside those schools. So it's really pleasing to see this coming forward, and also that the area in Rayleigh that we did have an issue has now fallen outside of that as well. So just positive steps all round. So thank you for your work on it.
Thank you, Councillor Belton. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. It's really just to flesh out the point that Councillor Cross made. On page 7.29 of the report, there's the summary of air quality objectives in England. And I just wondered, you've got the air quality objective and it's measured by different methods in there, but are they statutory requirements or are these advisory? And have we got a plan going forward to measure these? Because if we don't measure these, we don't know whether we've got a problem or not.
Thank you. At the moment, it's not a statutory requirement to measure for particulate matter at the moment, but there's new legislation and guidance in the pipeline that may require it. The guidance that we're getting from DEFRA and the steer we're getting from DEFRA at the moment is that the onus will probably be placed on county council highways to monitor, and local authorities will be expected to sort of assist and sort of run projects alongside those. But it's something we're keeping a close eye on, and when we get the guidance from DEFRA, then we'll of course follow any statutory requirements that we have.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. The Chair's got a question to ask of you, Mr. Patton. Could you tell me if in future there will be measures taken to make sure that the air quality is as good as what it is during the next 5 years, let's say? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We will continue to monitor a minimum for nitrous oxide. If at any stage the levels do go above the government set targets, then we will be back into a position where we will be looking to declare an AQMA, air quality management area, and then we will put in any necessary measures to bring the sort of air quality back to the high standards that we've managed to achieve to date.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Do I have any more questions from the committee? No, thank you. I move that the recommendation set out on page 7.1 of the report, R1, approve the annual status report to enable the air quality management area in Rayleigh to be revoked by the Department of Fisheries, Food and Rural Affairs. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. A show of hands, please, in favour. That's unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Padden, if you do want to leave, you can do. If you required to do so, that's fine with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will take my leave. Thank you.
Item 8, Hockley Woods Leaky Dams MOU. This report sets out the principles and framework of the MOU and how Essex County Council and Rochford District Council will work together to reduce flood risk to the residents of Hawkwell, Hawkley and Rochford. The report begins on 8.1. Mr. Aldridge, do you have anything to add to this report?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. No, I do not have anything else to add to this report, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Questions from the committee members? Do I have any? Thank you, Councillor Bird.
Just a quick one. Does this memorandum go far enough to protect those residents surrounding Hockley Woods? It seems to me like it covers the basics, but in your opinion, is there enough in there to give us reassurance?
Thank you. So Essex County Council are the lead local flood authority, so this is commissioned by them. I can't say I'm in a position to comment on whether it goes above and beyond, but so this has been brought to us from the lead flood authority, and this is their recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. Yes, Councillor Constable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading through the report, it looks like it's the wood and everything is to form a dam. So is there an area of Hockley Wood that can become a lake without affecting the woods at all? Because if you're going to be storing the water, are we going to be having situations where walkers through there are going to be complaining about the woods flooding? And as you know, Hockley Woods is built on a big slope, so it's all got to go downhill somewhere. So where do you know where it's all going to go and what it's all going to do, please?
Mr. Aldridge.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so there are proposed locations for these leaky dams, and there is already a lake pond within the woods which stores a lot of water. So these dams, is my understanding, will be installed in a way that will not impact upon any desired paths or public footpaths within the woods, but there will be an extension onto the current water flows within the woods itself, and will attempt to hold the water back. So, as rightly so, it's on a hill and it flows down to that area of Hawkwell. This is designed to slow that flow of water as it runs through the woods, if that makes sense.
So is this hopefully going to alleviate the flooding in Rochford town? Because I understand all that leads down to the brook at Rochford by the freight house and the reservoir, and then it goes down to the public house that has flooded on several occasions when we've got heavy rain. So is that to alleviate the problem in Rochford town as well, or is it more for a localised area?
Thank you. So at the moment, it's my understanding that it will address the area of Hawkwell, Belchamps, that area. But I'm happy to take that away and find further information to bring back.
Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Just one more question. Rochford will be responsible, the council will be responsible for the ongoing management once the scheme's completed. Do we have the resources to deliver that, or have we got any concerns that we could fall short?
Thank you. Mr. Aldridge.
Thank you, Councillor. So I did initially have concerns, but after speaking with Essex County Council and looking through the maintenance plan, it's very minimal. They will be mainly self-maintaining, and any additional maintenance will be picked up by our Woodlands team.
Thank you. Do I have any more questions? Councillor Cross.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was any intention to use beavers at all, Mr. Aldridge.
No, there is no intention to use beavers, thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out that Essex County Council are putting in some of these leaky dams over at Wick Park at Wickford. It was discussed with the the Environment Agency over there to put these in, which might help Rayleigh considerably due to the fact that water comes from Wickford, Shotgate, that area. Obviously, when it rains, it over, you know, if we get a thunderstorm at Rochford, the leaky dams won't work for Rochford in the park at all, but should alleviate some of the problems coming from the park or that area. Right, I will move to the recommendation set out on page 8.1 of the report. R1 to agree the memorandum of understanding as appended to this report. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Goodin. Thank you, Councillor Goodin. Could I have a vote for this, please, report? For? Unanimous, thank you. Item 9, Play Space Programme. This report highlights the capital investment required over the next 5 years to maintain the council's play areas for the preceding 10 years. The report begins on page 9.1. Mr. Houghton, do you have anything to add to this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing further to add at this time. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
I invite questions from the committee. Councillor Goodin.
Thank you, Chair. As the Ward Councillor for Hawkwell West, I've received many inquiries by residents and have worked with officers for these areas to be upgraded as a matter of urgency within the Clements Hall area that's mentioned in the report. Please can the officer clarify the order of renewal for both the playground and the skate park, as the summary has caused some confusion for members of the public.
Thank you. So if I can bring your attention to Appendix 1, which is on 9.9, you'll see there's a schedule set out there. Let everyone find the time to take so. So there's Clements Hall Skate Park, which is scheduled for this year, and the leisure centre itself, the play area, is scheduled for the following year after.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Councillor Constable, sorry.
It's not easy without name boards, is it, Mr. Chairman? I'm rather concerned. Page 9.3, 2.4 talks about Ashington playing fields, and it says both the toddler and senior play areas are in a deteriorated state with equipment over 20 years old and nearing or already at the end of its life expectancy. The senior play area was installed 5 years ago, and it was installed by the parish council, and it was paid for by grants and crowdfunding. Can I have the officer's assurance that before any equipment is replaced, that they liaise and consult with the parish council on what equipment is going to be replaced and why, please?
Mr. Houghton.
So I can see Mr. Aldridge has a bit more detail on that. So if I pass over to Mr. Aldridge, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, of course, we'll consult with the parish. We have done for many years. We wish to continue that relationship. But the teen area highlighted in this report, it's not talking about the recent install, it's the older equipment which is within the fenced off area. You've got an older compound unit in the corner, which is what this report is highlighting, not what was installed with the parish council 5 years ago.
Yep, thank you for that. But it just actually said that senior play areas are a deteriorated state, so whether that's just a slight grammatical error, I'm not sure. Also, the teen area, whilst I accept that has been vandalised, again, that area has been maintained, or it was installed by the parish council in the teen shelter, and I know the teen shelter is in a little bit of a rundown state. The police actually like it there because they know where to go and find the little darlings when they're playing up. I've had that from policemen in the area. They use that as a central point. So if that area is going to be redeveloped, perhaps you can speak to the council, because they are looking to install a mugger in the area, and it might be an ideal situation where you can revamp that area or move it to another area that is more convenient. So just like assurances that again, when that area is being developed, that you are actually going to speak to the parish and consult with the ward councillors for that area as well, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, of course. Again, we'll engage with the parish and the local community and residents around the area. Just in answer to your question around the police liking the location of it, it's been an ambition of ours as we install new play equipment to protect those that are vulnerable, and by citing some of these areas out of the way, it actually goes against protecting those that are vulnerable in some respects. So that's why we would look to relocate the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Item 2.8, Cherry Orchard Country Park. It states that the play equipment doesn't meet BS 1177 safety standards, yet that isn't receiving immediate replacement. I believe that's happening in the second year. What would happen if there was an accident now in that area, knowing that it doesn't meet safety standards? Thank you.
Marcus, would you like to take this one, please?
Thank you. So to be clear, equipment can not comply but still be safe. So we obviously undertake regular inspections. We have weekly inspections, quarterly inspections, and an annual independent inspection. So if it's deemed unsafe or to high risk, it'd be automatically closed. So none of the equipment here is at risk as such. But what we're saying is, by modern standards, it doesn't comply. So you couldn't have that piece built today. You just would not be able to order that piece. And where you have the challenge with this sort of thing is in terms of if you want repairs or parts, then you're in conflict. That sometimes you're asking something to be repaired that cannot be to the British safety standard, and therefore it's quite hard to underwrite the repairs. But nevertheless, the actual original piece of equipment is still safe to use. So we're just bringing it to people's attention that it's something you'd seek to replace at some stage, but there's no urgency to it, but you do need to. It's a bit like building regs on a house. Building regulations change over time, and your house, would not comply with today's regulations. But it's not to say it's unsafe. There's ways of working around that. It's just that we would not be of the standard that you'd expect now of play equipment. I hope that clarifies.
Thank you, Marcus. The question was, what would happen if there was an accident in the meantime and it doesn't meet current safety standards, and why isn't it being addressed first, in the first year rather than in the second year?
Sorry, just to repeat, because the ROSPA, which is the independent player spectrum we have, deems the equipment safe. So in terms of insurance claims, there is no claim to be had. So we can demonstrate that we're managing that piece of equipment perfectly safely. What we're just saying is that you would struggle to replace or repair parts of that equipment now because you can't get. So if I was to order something today, it would have to be made to the British safety standards, but it would then not complement the rest of the equipment, if that makes sense. So you get this conflict between trying to repair something that cannot be repaired to the standard again, and so that's where. But it is still safe. I mean, I'll be absolutely clear that we do not run or allow unsafe equipment. We would close it down immediately if we felt it was unsafe, or if any report suggested to do so. Thank you.
Could I just say that the equipment, as what Mr. Houghton has said, is ROSPA checked by credentialed people weekly and monthly, and to make sure that we did have one apparatus which was deemed to be not fit for purpose, and that was immediately taken away, and obviously removed from site because it was in a too dangerous condition. So yes, the equipment is checked to make sure that we are fully compliant with our insurances and so on. Thank you. Do I have any more questions from the committee? Councillor Belton, thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, this is the first report in a long time that I've absolutely loved seeing coming forward. So I'm really pleased with it, and I fully support it. I do have a few questions though, just to peace of mind. A couple of weeks ago, we were asked to agree a capital asset plan moving forward, where a budget of 120 grand a year had been put in, and I questioned that wasn't going to be enough to deliver some of the ambitions of the council. So where is the extra money coming from? Is it just coming out of general reserves? Because it wasn't agreed only 2 weeks ago. So that would be my first question. Do you want me to take them? Yeah? Do you want me to come?
So pretty pleased with doing like this, isn't it? So on that one, the monies available in the first year, and I made sure correspond with the report that went into council. So you'll find the monies are at the same total that's available through capital. For future years, what you've got to remember is that report that went into full council is almost looking back over this year. So there'll have to be a new capital programme put forward in February for the council to consider. So all we're highlighting is that there may be more monies required, and that's something for members to consider when budget setting in sort of February. But we're using this as a sort of a rolling piece that we probably bring in every year to say, this is the capital challenge you have over the next 5 years, and it's just to allow members to forward plan and have a bit more foresight and vision of what's required.
Thank you. And then just sort of 2 further questions which I can do at once. The skate park at Clements Hall, there was some 106 funding for that, wasn't there? Is that now gone, or is that being incorporated and this is just to top up the project? And the second question is, we've got figures for all the parks for 5 years, which is brilliant because, as you say, it allows us to look forward and plan. Are these figures considered? Are they based on quotations? Are they based on looking at what equipment needs replacing and then the average cost of that? How have we come to these figures? Because place equipment is really expensive, as we all know.
So, I mean, yes, I mean, I think both Adam and I, Mr. Aldridge and I, had attempted this in a couple of different ways to see if we came to a roughly same agreement, because there is a bit of art in this trying to forecast. So what we do have in terms of with the annual inspections is an absolutely huge spreadsheet which goes through item by item with an estimated end of life for every item. So we've gone through that to look at where we think each play space requires replacing over time. So it's based on a professional opinion of when they feel that these play spaces should be replaced. In terms of cost, obviously we've tendered and awarded play spaces for the last, I mean, both of us been here for a good 10 years. So it's based on our experiences over the last 10 years looking at prices. So I wouldn't say it's entirely, it's a guideline of the sort of, I think, quantum of budget you require to address these things as they come forward. The 106 monies, there is no specific 106 monies for a skate park at Clements Hall. There is some 106 monies that may be left from for leisure provision, and I've got to look carefully at the wording. But I believe it can be used in terms of allowing possibly for the drainage of the actual skate park. But it's the devil's in the detail of the wording at times. But there is some monies available. But this is mainly about capital that's been put aside from last year for the skate parks. This is where the money's found from.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Any more questions? I certainly have one, which is, are we, because of the amount of money for the next, after this coming year, for the next 4 years after that, obviously this will be a live document that we would have to either add or somehow make arrangements for equipment to be put in these play spaces. Do you foresee any extra money being put in the future? Because I do believe that we should sort of have at least a 20% margin in these prices. Thank you, Mr. Houghton.
So I've resisted trying to predict the inflation for the next 5 years. in terms of it's always a bit, beyond my skills. So I think that's why I want to bring it in every year. So what you'll see is, yes, you'll see the prices will change over years to reflect the fact that prices go up. But I didn't want to try and guess where our inflation will be for the next 5. So it is based on today's values. I think that you have to be a bit certain. I said, and then we'll revisit it every year. So I anticipate this report coming in possibly slightly a bit earlier in the sort of administrative year usually, but it will come in every year, and the prices will be adjusted accordingly with the sort of prices going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Just one more quick point, and I think you may have covered this already, Adam, with Councillor Constable's question, but when the parks and the play space equipment is chosen and upgraded, will there be any consultation locally with residents or schools or pupils? Because we've done it previously through a town council scheme, and it was really well received, because people felt they had a bit of a legacy with the space and they treat it better as a result of feeling part of it.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, we always plan and do engage with the community whenever we install any new play equipment. So the answer is yes, but we'll extend that to schools and community groups as well.
Thank you, Councillor Belton. Councillor Goodin.
And just to add on to that, Mr. Aldridge, could you also confirm that during this consultation you take into account additional needs, accessibility, etc.?
Thank you, Councillor Goodin. Yes, of course we do. One of the main parts of our tendering process is around inclusivity. That's the inclusion of all children of all different abilities. So yes, to answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. I move that the 6 recommendations set out on page 9.1 to 9.2 of the report. Does the council committee want me to read out all 6, or can we take it as a whole? Thank you. So, do I have a seconder? Councillor Goodin. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 10, Environment and Climate Scoring Matrix. The report proposes a standardised scoring matrix to evaluate the environmental and climate impact of decision making undertaken by the council. The report begins on page 10.1. Mr. Musk, do you have anything to add to the report, please?
Evening, councillors. Nothing to add to the report, but happy to take questions.
Do I have any questions from the committee? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Musk, we've looked at these reporting systems before, and it doesn't always work with our authority. Is this a better way of reporting than the traditional ones that we've used, or is it the same?
I'm not familiar with the previous formats that you've used. What we've tried to do is just look at the 3 biggest polluting climate risks in the borough, which is transport, energy and carbon of products, and ongoing energy of things that consume energy in their lifetime, and transport in terms of how services are accessed. So it's the 3, and waste. So it's energy, waste and transport. So that's a way of objectively scoring decisions. But not every decision is going to have those 3 components. It just means there's some objectivity and support to officers at the first stage of projects, that they think about energy, they think about the waste, they think about how services are accessed.
So basically it's making more systematic decisions.
And systematic and objective, as opposed to saying, yeah, we've looked at the environment, all good. It's like, yeah, but the environment is a very broad subject, as you're aware of.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Goodin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I welcome this report because I can refer back in times gone by where we haven't always been able to have this kind of matrix to measure the the environment impact, and one particular one is on the 4G pitches, for example. We couldn't make that decision because there wasn't this matrix in place. So thank you for Mr. Musk for what you've done here.
Thank you, Councillor Goodin. Councillor Wilson.
This one. Thank you, Chair. This all looks very good. I quite like the idea of this. But I've met something like this before. So my question is there going to be some sort of logical human oversight on this? The reason is, where I've met these before, you end up being in a position where you get paralysis by analysis. And you can't be doing it right because this system says you're not doing it right. So some of this it's not precise, it's not entirely accurate about what it's looking to do. And that means that you might end up with things in the wrong colour category, for example, because it's not entirely accurate the way it's been done. So my question is it going to be a human oversight that says, hang on, this isn't right? Thank you.
So I think in terms of embedding this, I think it's quite important that we speak to the officers that at the first stage of projects, when they're brought down, that there's a bit of hand-holding, the support. So the climate sustainability team currently, at the moment, tries to embed that, because it is a bit of a new language, and some measures are really obvious. It's like, okay, we're going to be moving this service to a very high energy building. It's poorly insulated when we were in a good building. Oh, great, let's think about the energy. With other ones who might be more nuanced. So there will be support at the first stage, and obviously before it gets to submitted. So if before a stage of this committee, I would look at it in terms of sign off and go, maybe some clarification, because it's got to be as easy for you to judge it. You don't want to be confused. The point is it's supposed to make decisions here more straightforward and collaborative, as opposed to subjective and vague. So hopefully we can get something that is good, and other local authorities have used it because we believe in sharing best practice, and it has helped decisions. And sometimes, as Councillor Gooding has mentioned, sometimes things aren't considered before, and actually they're very important, like the embodied energy of materials for football pitches, which is a massive area, and the waste that football pitch generates. Where is that football pitch? Have you got to drive to the football pitch, or is there a bus stop so public can get there, or can they walk to it? So everything ties in, and hopefully it'll be clearer for officers and members.
Thank you, Mr. Musk.
Thank you.
Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Yeah, just to say I welcome this. I think it's relatively straightforward, and what I hope it will bring is consistency, because I think that's what sometimes is lacking, because emotion comes in rather than logic, and in this case scoring. So I hope that this will provide a more consistent approach moving forward to big decision making. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belton. Do we have any more questions? Councillor Cross.
Yeah, congratulate Henry on this. It's a nice, easy graphic to understand for all. Just one minor point that you've got three categories, obviously red, amber and green. The negative score is 1 to 3, which is an equal is 3. So it's basically 9 is the total. So you've got 1 to 3 negative score. Then I would expect to see 4 to 6 rather than 4 to 7, and then 7 to 9, and then you've got 3 equal thirds, if you see what I mean. Just wonder why you've done it the way you've done it.
It's trying to look at every eventuality and still keep it clear. So clearly, if you've got 3 ones, like, it's awful for transport, it's awful for waste, and it's awful for energy. It's like very clear. Yeah, it's like, can you go and revisit this, please? Yeah, so it's 3 ones is 3. Obviously, 3 threes are 9. We love it. It's great for transport. It's great for carbon. It's going to generate no waste. And then you get into the more in the middle is where it gets clear. So ultimately, it's 3 criteria: waste, transport, and carbon. So if 2 out of the 3 are very clear, which is sort of 6, 7, 9 is clear. So if it's 7, 6, 7, 8, that's where it's probably going to get carried. It's the middle ground. So you can get, if it's 2 out of the 3 are good, but waste is awful, it doesn't mean we can't put that project forward. And ultimately, we're realistic. Sometimes it's just cost. You know, if we want to relocate the depot, but it's not so good for public transport, but it's council land and it's not going to cost a fortune, it's supposed to steer you to what are your important criteria. So I had to have that middle ground numbers of, I can't reject it because you've got 2 out of 3, where if you've got 3 out of 3 perfect, great. If you've got 3 out of 3 totally wrong, you need to go back to the drawing board. And then the middle area will always be up for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Muss. Any more questions? Okay. I will move the recommendation set out on page 10.1 of the report to adopt the environment and climate scoring matrix to provide evaluation in council decision making. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goodin, thank you. Can I have a vote on that, please? All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Item 11, Open Spaces Pesticide Policy. This report sets out the Council's policy regarding the use of pesticides on the land owned and managed by the Council. The report begins on page 11.1. Mr. Aldridge, do you have anything to add to this report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. No, nothing to add at this time, but happy to take questions. Thank you.
Do I have any questions from the committee? Squires Coleman. Councillor Squires Coleman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this as obviously moving forward on making our environment healthier and safer is a good move. But what criteria is going to be used to term the trial as a success? As we understand that we will have to get used to a weedier environment.
Mr. Aldridge, could you answer that one, please?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Thank you. So if you're referring to the non-pesticide control trials, you're right, there may be situations where we accept more weeds or accept more vegetation in these areas. And I think that's for us to bring back to this committee in a year's time after we've completed the trial and to demonstrate on what these alternative methods can achieve on them sites, if that makes sense. Ultimately allowing members to make that decision.
Mr. Marcus, could you answer that one?
Sorry to add, I mean, it's going to be as simple as a lot of before and after photos. So, you know, and I think if it's completely weed free, of course, it's exceptionally successful, and we want to, and that there could be something in between. But you know, it is subjective, isn't it? So, in terms of anything in between might be tolerant to some eyes and maybe not to others. I think, as Mr. Aldridge is saying, we'd probably want to do those trials with a series of photos. We'll come back with a conclusion and say, look, we actually think this is acceptable, but you may take a different view as a committee. Thank you.
Would you like to come back, Councillor?
Thank you. So, yeah, obviously it's going to be, all reports from PAN accept that it's going to be a lot weedier than we are used to currently. So will the trials be like for like, that I'm saying, in the same area? Will you have in the exact same area the trial next to using the pesticides, using the new methods? And also, how will we communicate? Have you had any thoughts of how we can communicate to our residents that it will be weedier, and that's something we'll have to accept to be in a safer environment?
Mr. Houghton.
I think Mr. Aldridge could have answered this as well. So, I mean, yes, we'll obviously have to ensure there's some communication. I mean, the trial areas are not going to be particularly large. I mean, to be clear, a lot of this policy is already what we practice. So, you know, to give members some sort of reassurance, you know, I don't anticipate it too much weedier. You know, we actually have good practice on pesticide use already. It's just about ensuring it's formalised. So, for example, I can think of, although it's reducing generally, you used to see quite liberal use of pesticides for spraying under shrub beds, spraying out round posts, along curb lines, and that sort of practice we stopped many years ago. But I think so. We just want to ensure it's consolidated and celebrated actually that we are already a low pesticide use service. So in many ways, I don't think you'll see too much impact. But I think what we want to do is ensure in hard surface areas where perhaps we are considering reducing it, that we do these trials on just a few patches. But it won't be swaths of weeds across different car parks. I think we're looking at a couple of selected sites, and I think we literally just put signs up, say these are trial areas, and explain what we're using.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Councillor Stuart Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I really support the report, particularly paragraph 2.11, where it's the unequivocal statement that we're going to use pesticides as a last resort. I think that's a really strong message. Being slightly facetious, at point 4.2 on page 11.3, it talks about the maintenance and the visual amenity of the district, but I think colleagues in Essex Highways don't necessarily follow the same rules. So I think residents have seen what happens when you don't apply these pesticides. Following on from Councillor Squires Coleman's point, we've got on paragraph 4.3 on page 11.3, we talk about the footpaths and hard standing, but could we bring forward the trial in the appendix so that we can minimise the amount of pesticides that we put down? That's one question. Hold that thought. The other question I've got is on page 11.6, the draft policy there mentions that there's an appendix to the appendix, which is a flow chart for pesticide use, and I can't see that in the report. So the question is, does that exist? I know it might not be attached to this, but does that already exist? And my last one is an observation more than anything, but in the appendix on point 6, talking about alternatives, it's a sort of a little bit underwhelming because there are lots of alternatives to pesticide use, and I would, if possible, I'd just like to see that fleshed out a bit. That was it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Councillor Wilson. Mr. Houghton.
So can I'll probably pass the first questions over to Mr. Aldridge regarding the pesticide policy report. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Thank you, Councillor. So yeah, I mean, it should be noted, when we're talking about hard surfacing areas, so we're very proud of the fact that we use minimal pesticides anyway. So the impact is likely to be minimal. I can almost say for certain that we haven't used any glyphosate-based pesticides this season. So when we're talking about the hard surface areas, I do not foresee much of an impact as to what we're doing now. It just proposes different methods that we could approach it with. When we're looking at these trials, I appreciate you'd like them to be brought forwards. So I take it you mean act quicker to do these trials, if that makes sense. But we wouldn't, without doing a whole season, we wouldn't see the benefit of these trials. So when we look at traditional pesticide use, I mean mainly glyphosate, pesticides, herbicides, and tank mixes with other residual pesticides, you may be able to apply them once, which will then last for the whole year. Without doing these trials, we don't know, and lasting that whole season, we're not going to be able to determine the effectiveness of them trials without doing a like-for-like comparison with the competitor, if that makes sense. Apologies, I'm lost for your last question.
There's the question about the flow chart.
Yes, that does exist. So I think there's an oversight on my behalf. So I can certainly get that circulated to members. It's basically best practice, so it's detailed within this report anyway. And the last resort practice of the use of pesticides is within the COSH legislation anyway, and that's what everybody's taught who is licensed to use pesticides. It should always be a last resort, and that flow chart is from that training and from the HSE legislation. But yes, I can circle that around.
Would you like to come back?
And the
Councillor
final bit was
Wilson?
a request on the point 6 about non-pesticides. It was just whether we can flesh that out a bit, because those are growing in popularity more.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. So we do. I think that's what I was trying to address. Sorry, my first answer. So where we have not been using glyphosate or any pesticide control, for that matter, within our parks and open spaces, particularly our hard surface areas, we have been using other methods, which is manual control, mechanical control of these weeds. So I think we have a good understanding of how labour intensive that is and can be, and the resource required to do that. I'm sure there are other methods available. These ones that we're proposing here are kind of methods where the industry is changing, and they're pointing us towards these new products. So I'm happy to look at any other options that could be considered.
Mr. Hon.
That's right. I think probably the neatest way to do that is the policy is, I guess, something we'd review. So when we're going to, at the end of the trial period, I think we can pad out that section 6, because we will have more experience of using alternatives ourselves. So I think that's probably the easiest time to do that is actually when we bring back a conclusion of the trials. We can also say actually a good time to review the entire policy as well, and we can add to it then, because we'll have more knowledge and experience.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Councillor Cross? No? Councillor Squires? Coleman?
Thank you, Chair. Please forgive me if I'm teaching my grandmother to suck eggs. It's just for my information, really. During the trial and going into hopefully a transition, are you going to be using the expertise of PAN in helping us go that way and fulfil the direction we want to go in?
So yes, the short answer is yes. There's a few methods of assessing our use and our transition, but the Pesticide Action Network is one of those that's detailed in the policy and the report.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Aldridge, when you talk about mechanical, I presume that means shoveling and getting rid of excess earth that builds up where weeds grow, because you've only got to look at some of the curbs around the district where they're not cleared, and the only way to clear it is by hand or mechanical, and then the dirt builds up, the seeds grow, and we get the weeds, which have traditionally been treated by the chemicals. So are you looking at mechanically making sure that our hard surfaces are in good condition to stop the production of weeds in the first place?
Thank you. So the short answer is yes. By mechanical, I refer to the use of machinery more than physical manual removal, but that is also another method of removing the weeds. We have been using new tools and equipment within the team that makes that less labour intensive for our staff. Sorry, but the answer to your question is yes. We do mean to address that as part of our maintenance, and that's what the teams do. I can't speak for the roadways and the highways because that's the responsibility of Essex County Council, but I can certainly speak for the car parks within the parks and open spaces which this policy refers to. Thank you.
Could you use the speaker, please?
The roadways are just an example of where we get an accumulation of dirt. Obviously, I know you don't look after that, but it was just to show you an example of how it builds up and the weeds then take over and then the surfaces get ruined. So obviously mechanical removal will prolong our hard spaces and save the council money in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Constable. No? Councillor Gooding.
Yeah, not a question, more an observation, Chair. Just the introduction of this policy is a way of formalising the best practice that this council is already putting into practice, and I welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding. A question from the Chair, if I may. I know we have hemlock, which is somewhat close to one of our schools, and also obviously a Japanese knotweed, which is another weed that proliferates itself everywhere. Will we be using other chemicals to knock those back as far as we can in the way of treating the areas? Mr. Aldridge.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, and just to reiterate on what I said earlier, we haven't used any glyphosate-based pesticides. I was referring to other than under our legal duty under the Invasive Species Act. So it's unlikely we will use other projects. I'm happy to explore other projects, but where we have a legal obligation to stop the spread of invasive species, we will base that on risk and use whatever is advised and allowed by the HSE, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. No more speakers. I move that the recommendation set out on page 11.1 of the report. Can I take both of those reports? Councillor Wilson.
Can I take them separately, please, Chair?
Yes, by all means, yes. R1, to approve draft pesticide policy as appended to the report. Do I have a show of hands, please? In favour? Seconded by Councillor Gooding. Show of hands, please. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's carried, thank you. Sorry, I should have said against. Abstain. Councillor Wilson. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. That motion is carried. R2, to provide an update and review of the policy at the Climate Emergency and Environment Committee in approximately 6 months. Can I have a show of hands, please? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's carried. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gooding. Show of hands, please. Sorry. That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 12, wildflower verges. This report sets out the Council's findings, costings and proposed options for the wildflower verges and tree planting initiative in the district. The report begins on page 11.1. Sorry, 12.1, sorry. Mr. Aldridge, do you have anything to report to this? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing further to add to this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I invite questions from the committee. Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a question really whether plugging of wildflowers is cost effective, and are there any alternatives that have been looked at? I know you've got a trial area near Turret House, is it? I'm not sure, but to me it seems quite an expensive operation, and I'm thinking sort of rough up the ground a bit and throw a few seeds down, and that may do the job just as effectively. May take a bit longer perhaps, but thank you.
Mr. Aldridge.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, it is quite an expensive exercise to plug. We have considered other options, considered many options while we've looked at this, including just scrubbing up the area and placing some seed down. The issue being with that is within predominantly Essex clay soils. If we were to do that, we could actually be less cost effective because the success rate of the seed is unlikely to take due to the nutrient content in the soil, meaning the grasses will take over. So it's probably not cost effective to do it that way. By plugging, we can prepare, and we already have established plants within there that stand a better chance to compete with weed species, if that makes sense.
Councillor Bilton.
Thank you. I'm a fan of wildflower verges, but they are difficult to achieve. As someone who's got a wildflower meadow, and it's taken 2.5 years of my husband's hard work, and it still isn't a full success. Plug-in, yes, I agree, it's the best option, but it is expensive, and you can't account for the squirrels digging them back up again. So it is a lot of money to invest. I was around in 2019, I think, when this motion come forward, and I would imagine I would have supported it because it's something that I like, but this is a lot of areas. Are we confident in all of these areas? Do we want to start with less? I know we've got a trial going on. Is it all or none? I'm concerned that 130 grand, is that what residents want the money spent on, or would they rather see those verges cleared and be tidy, and it's getting that balance right? And there's a lot of areas here, and if it worked and it's beautiful, fantastic, but if it doesn't, it's a lot of money down the drain.
Mr. Houghton, would you like to reply?
Sorry, so the report tonight is just to note, and so we wanted to, I guess, address an outstanding motion in many ways. So the costs, I think you're right, are high. I think, but we wanted to ensure and give confidence to the committee that we had taken the motion seriously, if not a little bit belated in addressing the motion. I want to ensure that we were thorough about looking at the options. So it is a high cost. I think that as we suggest really at this stage, the best we can do is a trial. And I still think actually if we want to introduce wildflowers or a better wildflower mix, it's probably far more cost effective to do so in our open spaces than it is on verges, which are you don't have the challenge of just trying to establish a wildflower meadow. You have the challenge of dealing with road traffic management as well, and so the costs become quite high, and the benefits are generally lower. I mean, if you think about the speed of traffic going past, and you're trying to attract invertebrates to an area that's going to be, it's harder to get to. Whereas actually we do it in terms of the open spaces and build on those first. I think that's the easier area. But it is a particularly hard thing to do. I mean, I think Cherry Orchard and the meadows there are now in a very good condition, but it's taken about 14 years of management and. I think as untrained eye, you probably think we've done nothing over the years, but I can assure you quite a lot of work and some sort of science has gone into that. And so plug planting is a way forward. I think it's the only realistic way in very sort of thick swalled verges, and our open space is very similar. So I think the cost will just be this time. But it's something that we said we've explored. We've come back with what the motion requested, and we've looked at the feasibility. And I think members wanted to revisit that, we could do so, but as far as I'm concerned, at least we've addressed the motion. I think that's what I wanted to do this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Any more questions from the floor? Councillors.
Thank you, Chair. So will some of the costs be reclaimed by less groundwork, like less mowing and stuff? Will there be some of the costs regained that way in the future?
Mr. Houghton?
Usually no. If I'm honest. So I think there's a bit of I think people presume that by not cutting the grass all year, you make a saving. But realistically, if you're managing as a hay meadow, then you've got to cut and collect and remove those risings. And so there's a cost in that. It's almost proportional as if you were riding a mower over there, 10 or 12 times a year. So it's there is. But I think in terms of benefit, and I think again where we're looking to do with the open spaces, rather than just having wall-to-wall short grass, if you can build some structure and interest into your open space, and you can have pockets of wildflowers, and adding colour and interest to the park, then I think it's worth a trial to see what happens.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Chairman. This is purely a trial then, before you go out and start rewilding all the verges. The report that was in the press during the week stated that it was a done deal and all the verges were going to be wild meadows right across the district. I know it's the press, but we've already had residents getting on and asking us about what's going to be happening to their verges, etc. If this trial is a success, before you start rewilding verges, say Ashington Road, will you be talking to the ward councillors to make sure that this is being done in the right places and is appropriate for the area? Because obviously there's sight lines, there's some verges that are maintained by the parish councils and some that's maintained by the district. So can I have the assurances that we will be involved in any areas that are going to be rewild, please?
Mr. Houghton.
Thank you. Yes, completely. So from our point of view, this is just a trial. I still think that if this trial was successful, although I wouldn't want to anticipate the report entirely, but I think we'd still be coming back to say we don't wish to consider verges. We'd be recommending more space within the open spaces first. And again, there isn't the budget available at this time to do so. So we could not just go ahead. This would have to be a report that would be brought back in, identifying budget, where you want to do it, the approach, etc. So this is literally a trial that we'll bring back to the committee to say whether that trial is successful, and then perhaps we want to put forward other options for the committee to consider at that time. But certainly won't be doing any more than the trial areas. Thank you.
Yep, I'm pleased to hear that we will be consulted on it, because I'm not that impressed with the wildflowers and the trees that are being planted at the bottom of Ashington Field at the moment. Our residents have come to us and said that what a mess it still looks, and it's not being sort of tidied up much. So I'd like to see those areas that you've already started to be a bit more maintained and looked after as well, please.
Mr. Houghton.
Thank you. Duly noted, though. Thank you.
Councillor Goodin.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to clarify something that was mentioned by Councillor Sargent. I think you may have mistaken. Constable. Yay!
Should be super detective.
Councillor Constable, regarding the verges being wildflowered, I believe that's the Essex County Council report that's come out that I've seen.
Thank you, Councillor Goodin. Might I just say to the committee that to eradicate the grass, you'd have to put yellow rattle in, which would then deplete the nutrient that's in the grass. And if you start putting wildflowers on grass verges, you will start to put seeds in the footpaths of the grass verges. And who's going to, we've already spoken about weeds growing in the footpaths, you will have flowers growing in the footpaths. So I don't think that's a very good idea. I know it takes time, but I don't think, and it's an ideal place for these sort of plants to grow, where they've got very good drainage and they grow exceptionally well when they've got good drainage. And they need very little soil in the way of a footpath, just a crack, and you'll get a daisy or whatever grow in it, and you'll be complaining about footpaths. So I don't really think that that's a clever idea at the moment. However, having said that, the coverage that we are trying to do with the wildflowers, I myself do put in seeds, but you've got to understand that you can have a packet of seeds of 1,000 and you will only get 100 plants grow. Seeds do not always germinate where you want them to germinate, and putting in plugs is a better idea, even though you may lose 10%. It's recognised that you will lose 10%, but it's still a better solution to the seeds, because birds will eat the seeds, and obviously, as I said, seeds do not always germinate where you want them to germinate, and especially if they're on grass. To rake an area to the size of what we want, we would need to have a machine to rake that area to get the seeds into the ground in any case. So putting plugs in is a viable area or viable thing to do. I might add that over at Cherry Orchard, we now have orchids, wildflower orchids, which have only just appeared in that meadow. It's a great thing for the council to have. I don't know if you've seen it on other programmes on the television of orchids that are growing, and these are really good for our purpose of nature and for our carbon neutrality as well. So I do think that this is a great thing for us to have. So I will take it. I'll move to the recommendations set out on page. Oh, I beg your pardon. Councillor Squires, Mark Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. Just as with the pesticide policy, I think we have all got to get used to our environment being a little, what maybe some people would consider a little bit untidy or messy. I think we need to get used to that a bit, and because I want a healthier, safer environment for my children, grandchildren, and all our residents to live in. So I would like to help as we go forward with this, and hopefully the policy and the trials are successful, in helping assuring our residents and giving them the information that so that they support us and they understand exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Thank you, Councillor. The point is that if we can grow these plants and they're wildflower, like cornflower, daisies and so on, they will seed themselves in the areas that they drop the seeds. And so we will have a really good blanket of wildflowers everywhere. So I think this is something which we would like to carry on with. Thank you. Do I have any more questions? Councillor Belton.
Just one after that. You said about you want to carry on with it, but I thought we would just establish that there's a trial happening at the moment and there is nothing else to carry on with until the trial comes forward in 2025, and then we'll review it. I think what you just said was something very different.
No, I was trying to point out that it is something which the council is trying to achieve in the long term, and this will only sort of give us an idea of how it happens, what happens in the short term, and then we can progress from there. So that's what all I'm trying to emphasise. Are we okay? Sorry? Yeah. So I'll move to the recommendations set out on page 12.1 of the report. R1, to note the content of the report addressing the December 2019 motion as set out in paragraph 2.1. Thank you. That a further report outlining the progress made on the wildflower trial is brought back to the committee in the autumn of 2025. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goodin, show of hands, please. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 13, our ash dieback policy. This report sets out the Council's policy regarding the possible risk and impact posed by the ash dieback disease. The report begins on page 13.1. Mr. Aldridge, do you have anything to add to the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I invite questions from the committee. None. One from the chair. With the ash dieback, I'm sure that we can cut back the ash dieback and try and rejuvenate the plant or the tree without doing too much damage. Is that okay with you, Mr. Aldridge?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, yes, that is fine with me.
Thank you. It is 13. I move the recommendation set out on page 13.1 of the report to approve the ash dieback policy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goodin. A show of hands, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 14, work programme. Mr Houghton, would you present the report, please?
Thank you. So in front of you, you've just got the work programme set out, provisionally setting out what we hope to bring forward for the next two committees. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Constable, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like an item to go on the work plan that Mr. Houghton brings a report to the council with the costings of reinstating the rangers, so that this committee can consider the cost and then put it to full council for approval at a later date, please.
Mr Houghton.
So obviously I'll be led by the chair to some degree on whether if that's something you wish to consider. I mean, it's a fairly short report to put together, so it would be revisiting the figures that we already have. And I mean, I could put the report together very quickly. I'm just thinking in terms of timing. If there is some possibility, I think if it's January, I suppose it may be too late for the budget setting, or we'll come very close to the budget setting. But certainly, I'm more than happy to put in. If it's, I guess, almost an information report to hear for you to note and consider, then I can do that quite quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, if that's available and with the committee's indulgence, it would be nice if that could be brought forward before the budget, so that it can be considered for next year's budget, and obviously to then be considered by full council. So yes, it's something I would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Constable. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see a work plan. It's really helpful for us to get a picture of what this committee is going to do over the rest of this municipal year. Just one question, it's not that you'll necessarily be able to answer now. If there is another meeting of environment, because I hear that we may be having an extra one squeezed in, could the fly tipping policy come forward rather than wait until January? Because it is a huge issue in the area when it does happen, and it may be small in the grand scheme of things, but when it happens it costs us money and it upsets a lot of people. So I'd welcome seeing that policy as soon as possible if there was an earlier opportunity to discuss it. Thank you.
Mr Houghton.
Yes, we're endeavoured to do so. I mean, obviously, we've planned the year fairly carefully in terms of workloads and when we think people will be available to produce the reports. But yes, if there is a request and a sort of a move from the committee to do so, then if there's an earlier committee, then we'll arrange for that to be presented if we can. Thanks.
Any more questions from the floor? No? No? Thank you very much. Members, this is the report for noting, and noted the other extras on top. Thank you very much. This concludes our business for the evening. Thank you for